Yes, things are actually swinging in their favor. The COC arguments on EBITDA recovery are to be rejected. So, that's something that's come favorable in their favor. EBITDA distribution is not part of the RFRP resolution plan. And, Supreme Court, basically it appears that things are actually now in their favor, of JSW Steel. So, yes, I think we should get that up for you on the screen. Yes, the Supreme Court has overturned its own judgment. It clears JSW Steel Resolution plan, and that's the reason why we are seeing the big spike up out there. So it's come in JSW Steel's favor. Earlier, in fact, the judgment was against them, and now there is, a good uptake that we're seeing in the stock price because of this. I don't think anyone on the street really was factoring in that Bhushan will be taken away from JSW Steel because they've gone ahead and, they've turned it around as well. But for the time being, this is positive for JSW Steel. If in case, the asset was to be taken away from them, then it would be a big issue because they had spent money to turn it around. They'd earned some money on this asset as well. So how would they U-turn the entire process? So that was the big question. For the time being, it appears logic has prevailed and things have gone in JSW Steel's favor. Ashmit joins us on the phone line to help us out with with the action. Well, I think we're getting a reaction. For the time being, that explains why the stock has moved to the high point of the day as we speak. So good news coming in for JSW Steel. Remember earlier the problem was that the point was that JSW Steel may have to go ahead and liquidate, that the Bhushan asset that they'd taken over a few years ago may have to go for liquidation, which would have made things very, very messy from every perspective. The money that was invested of around 20,000 crores, the profitability that was earned on this particular asset as it turned around, and how would you redistribute it and how would you re-auction this particular asset? So all of that, seems to have cleared out for the time being because the Supreme Court has overturned its own judgment that was earlier. I think it was earlier in 2025 itself. And at that point of time, JSW Steel had pulled back, big time on that particular day. And after that, we've seen a bit of recovery. To be fair, I think the stock price is actually more than 10% higher than at the time of the Supreme Court's last verdict itself. So explains why the stock is holding well in the green. We'll try to get in Ashmit, or maybe we'll try to get in a couple of reactions. But sense has prevailed, as I said, and it's moved in. We have Ashmit, I think, who's joining us on the phone line.
No, he's not.
We'll get him in just a bit.
But nonetheless, this looks like it's positive news coming for JSW
absolutely.
Steel.
So basically the case was such as JSW Steel went ahead. They got Bhushan Steel, Bhushan Power and Steel via the bidding process. They took the asset for around 20,000 crores. They turned the asset around and everything was going according to plan.
Yeah.
The problem was suddenly there was an appeal and there was an appeal to go ahead and liquidate this asset.
Yeah.
And at that point of time, the Supreme Court had suggested maybe that's something that could be taken on board. But now, that very same judgment has been U-turned and it's cleared the way for JSW Steel's resolution plan for BPSL, that is Bhushan Power and Steel. We have Mr. Ranina, the senior advocate, Supreme Court, who joins us on the show. Hi, Mr. Ranina. It appears better sense has prevailed and this judgment is in favor of JSW Steel. How do you read it?
Well, it's a very good development. Yeah. Obviously, they realized that to dispose of the assets would create a lot of problems and a lot of things would have to be overturned. So I think the Supreme Court has understood the problems and therefore they have now given them the permission to go ahead with the merger and go ahead and continue with what they are doing in the past.
Right. So it's a step in the right direction. And, Mr. Ranina, the other problem was it wasn't just this case that would be in question. If the Supreme Court had actually gone ahead with the liquidation, there were so many other cases and the entire process would have been questioned. So I think for, all the other cases as well, it's actually a positive development. Your comment on this?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it's a very good judgment. It is a landmark judgment because it sets the tone for all future such issues. And therefore, once the Supreme Court has allowed the merger to take place, to ask for liquidation, because liquidation is a very serious problem. Apart from selling off the assets, so many thousands of employees would be, without the jobs, and also banks may suffer. So the best is to merge. In fact, that is the whole objective of the IBC Court, to save a company, to save the institutions, financials, and to protect the interests of the employees.
Absolutely, Mr. Ranina. And just coming back to you, for the time being,
We do have another reaction. We have Dushyant Dave, who is the former president, Supreme Court Bar Association, joining in as well. Mr. Dave, what is your reading in terms of this particular ruling by the Supreme Court? As Mr. Ranina said, it sets a precedent for other cases as well.
I agree with Mr. Ranina wholeheartedly. I think Supreme Court made a grave error in passing the judgment in the first instance, Justice Belatri with his bench, and set at naught the liquidation process which had already been implemented for almost 3 years. So I think that was really a very serious error on the part of the Supreme Court. And I would say that, I think the Chief Justice has done well to, recall and review and set aside that judgment. Because ultimately we all know that the insolvency process in India is even otherwise slow and is not hugely successful as it was expected to be. And a judgment like the one which Justice Bela Trivedi authored would have really set at naught the entire process, backward. So I think it's very important that we should expedite these processes as much as possible, because then only we can get the real value of the assets which are under challenge, under stress, and we can continue to retain the employment of thousands of workers. We can continue to increase the production, and the banks and other creditors, including sometimes, the non-statutory and unsecured creditors perhaps might benefit. So I think overall, I would say this judgment is a welcome judgment, and it really sets, as Mr. Ranina said, a tone in the right direction.
So it's done and dusted now, right, Mr. Dave? It's gone in JSW Steel's favor, and no further questions on this asset. Would that be the correct understanding?
Yes, absolutely correct. I don't think there can be any further question about this, because ultimately, it's not just a question of, JSPL. It's a question of the banks, and these are public sector banks. And we are talking about thousands of crores of rupees of banks. Correct. So, employment is very important. Ultimately, you must realize one thing, that today there is large-scale unemployment in the country, and every job matters. And Supreme Court should be, conscious of that. So I think in a way, this is really a great reminder to us.
Appreciate you joining in, Mr. Dave, and giving us that quick comment. But before we let you go, this spells good times, not just for this particular case, but for the other cases that were pending as well, and a couple of cases that were resolved as well. It's actually a thumbs up for the entire resolution process, isn't it?
Well, the facts of this case are very peculiar. But I would definitely say that, I have not had a chance to read the judgment as yet, but I would definitely say, and I would hope that Supreme Court has really expressed opinion about the, whole law, because this law is not being properly implemented. We know that, NCLT is functioning very dissatisfactorily across the country.
Yes.
NCLT is not able to correct those errors. We know there is large-scale inefficiency and fair amount of corruption in the process. Which is hurting the country.
Okay.
Which is hurting, the banks. It is hurting public interest. It is hurting, very, purpose. You look at Europe and America, the liquidation processes are so quick and so successful. That's what we have to do.
Okay, that point is taken, Mr. Dave.